Hey you guys, welcome back to my channel. Hope you're all doing well. Yes, I know I'm not in my normal makeup space, but that's because I am doing something new and I like to call it coffee and crime. Yes, we're jumping into the true crime train because I just like true crime. There's no rhyme or reason for it. Except for the fact that I think it's interesting and fun. Not that murder is fun, but there's no good but to come after that. Anyway, let's just move on from that unfortunate sentence right there. I got my coffee right here. I had no handle. Actually, fun fact, I used to not like coffee and then life happened and now I need coffee to survive. And I am really excited to talk about this case that I have for you today. It's actually a two-parter. I hope you guys enjoy it. I didn't think that these two worlds had any connection at all, and the fact that there is one is just mind-blowing to me. I think it's interesting. I hope you guys think it is too, even though it's an unfortunate connection, I will say. A, I think it's important that we talk about it, and B, it leaves me astonished at just how we got here today. Alright, now before I get into the case, I just want to say a couple of things. Everything in this video is my personal opinion, okay? And also everything in here is public information. So I suggest you go do your own research, form your own opinions. I'm going to have all my sources linked down below so you can go watch whatever videos, read whatever articles I found all my information from. Now there is going to be mention of some very sensitive topics today. I know I put a trigger warning in the beginning, but just in case, we are going to be talking about abuse, sexual abuse, rape, and it is involving children. So if that's going to trigger you in any way or you're just uncomfortable with it, then I suggest you just click off, go watch something else, and then maybe just come back for a different video. Oh, so if I'm looking down, that's because I'm A, looking at my notes, or B, checking my monitor. So if you see me looking down at 8 point, then that's probably why. Now, I believe that's it. So we can just jump into the case. So in today's case, we are headed to Beverly Hills, California. And on August 20th, 1989, Kitty and Jose Menendez were murdered in their Beverly Hills home.
Beverly Hills emergency?
Yes, police.
What's the problem?
Sounds,
What's the problem? What's the problem?
someone killed my parents.
Pardon me?
Someone killed my parents.
What? Who? Are they still there?
Yes.
The people...
No.
Jose Menendez being shot 6 times with 1 fatal blow to the back of the head, and Kitty Menendez being shot 9 times with 1 fatal blow to the cheek. Now this was a gruesome crime scene. Police were just shocked at how bad it was. Blood was just all over the living room, the foyer area. Their sons Eric and Lyle, who were the ones who found them, were just hysterical as police were making their way inside of the house. And when the media heard about this murder in Beverly Hills, people were shocked because things like this aren't supposed to happen in Beverly Hills. Beverly Hills is classy, it's fancy rich people. There's supposed to be no crime in this neighborhood. Things like this aren't supposed to happen to rich, successful people like Kitty and Jose Menendez. First of all, who is Jose Menendez, right? Why would anybody want to murder him in his Beverly Hills home? Now, we have to go all the way back to the beginning. So, Jose Menendez was born on May 4th, 1944, back in Havana, Cuba. Now, shortly after the beginning of the Cuban Revolution, Jose Menendez actually had to escape the country, and he ended up going to live with his cousin in his cousin's attic. And from then on, he attended Southern Illinois University, where he met Mary Louise Kitty Anderson. Now, Jose Menendez, he really carried the Menendez name with a lot of pride. I mean, he just bragged about his family name everywhere he went. And there was, I guess, a lot of history behind the Menendez name, with his own mother being an Olympic swimmer. From what I read, his family, I don't know how wealthy they were back in Cuba. I'm assuming that they were very well off, but I don't know. That's just me assuming. But he wasn't very open or warm with people. He was very much, I don't even want to say introverted. I think he was just very cold and closed off. Now, Kitty, she was the complete opposite of Jose Menendez. She was very open, popular, everyone liked her. She was a beauty pageant queen who also had dreams of making something of herself. She really wanted to pursue journalism, maybe even go into acting. That's when her and Jose first met, and they were immediately drawn to one another. And they eventually ended up getting married back in 1963 before moving to New York, where Jose got an accounting degree at Queens College. Their sons, Joseph Lyle Menendez, was born on January 10th, 1968, and Eric Galen Menendez was born on November 27th, 1970. Now, Jose Menendez, to me, in all of my research that I've done, I feel like he just couldn't stay still. He had to be doing something all the time. And right now, I'm just talking about his work history, right? Because this man jumped from job to job, and not in a bad way. He was very successful in all the fields of work that he did. Because when the family lived back in Princeton, New Jersey, he first started off as the lead of U.S. operations / vice president of the Hertz rental company. Then in the early 80s, he became the head of RCA Records, signing many of the bands that we know of today, such as Duran Duran, The Eurythmics, Menudo, and so on and so forth. After this, the family packed up their bags to go to Beverly Hills, California, where he wanted to take a job as a corporate executive at International Video Entertainment. I'm sorry, I'm reading off my notes because I don't have this memorized. Which actually, they ended up producing the first Rambo movie. And I also know that that's not their name today. I actually didn't add that in my notes. I will put it on the screen though. Now, as I mentioned earlier, they had two sons, Lyle and Eric. Now, while growing up, Jose really had these boys in a lot of sports, or at least trying out different sports. They went from swimming to baseball, and in the end, Eric and Lyle both ended up being star tennis players, with Eric actually advancing to become a nationally ranked player. Lyle, on the other hand, although he was really good at tennis as well, he was more focused on becoming like his father. He really wanted to be a businessman. They both really wanted to impress Jose. They both did whatever they could to just please him. They just wanted to be good enough for their dad, and unfortunately, they weren't. Nothing they did ever pleased him. Now, one of the former coaches of the boys actually said that Jose would stay all throughout the practice. Okay, so you know those like sport parents, like soccer moms or soccer dads? Well, Jose was this parent, just 100 times worse. He would stay all throughout the practices, but he would interrupt the practices to tell the boys what to do and tell them to not listen to the coach that he was paying for, because the coach didn't know what he was talking about, but he did. He just wanted to take control of everything. He even went as far as to pick up tennis lessons so that he could tell the boys how to play, and it was just a whole mess. Now, Lyle has even said that while he was in Little League Baseball, Jose actually told him that he wasn't allowed to be making friends with the teammates, because baseball and sports wasn't about making friends or having a good time. It was all about competition and winning that competition. Now, Jose very much looked down upon the boys having friends. Now, this is my just like observance, especially at like a young age, and this might make sense a little bit later. Now, on the night of the murders, the boys actually went out to the movies to go watch Batman, and afterwards they were going to the Taste of LA festival with their friend Perry Berman. I guess they ended up not being able to find him, so instead they just ended up making plans to meet with Perry at the Cheesecake Factory, but they actually had to go back home in order to get an ID for Eric, which is actually when they ended up finding their parents dead in the living room. Now, following the murders, the police were a little bit suspicious of the brothers, but they weren't prime suspects at this point. Instead, the police were actually following like a mob hit, because Lyle has said that his dad had actually been in business with some seedy characters. Now, what really grabbed police, specifically Detective Les Zoller's attention about the brothers, was that after the murders, which if it happened on a Sunday night, that Monday morning when they returned back to the house, they went to go pick up some clothes and some tennis gear, which I'm not gonna lie, that sounds a little bit strange. So that's when he really like started to question the brothers and their involvement in this. Now, it was after this that the police actually kept an eye on the brothers, specifically on their spending habits, because to them, it was as if the brothers were spending an unusual amount of money, especially large amounts of money. You know, they were spending a lot of money on Rolex watches, cars. Lyle actually bought a restaurant space, while Eric had actually spent money on private tennis lessons. A lot of this wasn't really sitting well with detectives, so they were keeping their eye on the brothers. Now, while Lyle, on one hand, you know, he was very much calm, cool, he had himself very well collected. Eric, on the other hand, he was the more frat. He had a really hard time the following months after their parents' murders, and his behavior was actually very concerning to his family members, so his cousin suggested that he go back to see his therapist, Dr. Jerome Oziel. Now, the reason that Eric even had a therapist to begin with was because back when the family lived in Calabasas, Lyle and Eric actually got involved in some house-to-house burglaries, and they ended up getting caught. Now, because Lyle at the time was, I believe he was 18 already, so he was legally an adult. Eric, on the other hand, was a minor. So Jose told Eric to take the whole blame because he knew that nothing would go on Lyle's record, and Eric would probably just get like probation or community service or something. And he wasn't wrong about that because all Eric got was court mandated therapy. I also believe they did have to pay back the money. I'm pretty sure. Which is when he started to go see Dr. Jerome Oziel. Now, Dr. Jerome Oziel is a controversial piece in this story, and just he's a controversial piece just anywhere, because not too long after Eric started to see Dr. Oziel, Eric turns to Oziel and says, "We did it. We killed them." Now, after Eric confesses to Dr. Oziel that he and Lyle in fact did kill their parents, Oziel after this wants to have sessions with both Eric and Lyle. But it's not just that. Oziel then decides to take it upon himself. He thought it was a bright idea. He starts recording the sessions without their consent. Now, not only is that a major HIPAA violation, that just goes against any type of security that a person has when going to therapy. He threw HIPAA out the window. Not only is he secretly recording the sessions, he's allegedly having his mistress, Judalon Smith, sit in on the sessions in a different room. Hey you guys, so sorry for the interruption, but as I'm editing, I realized that I forgot to say that not only was Judalon his mistress, but she was also his patient. I also don't think I mentioned that he was also a married man. For the most part, I think I went on to explain the whole tape situation as best as I could, at least, because again, like, I don't know all of the legal terms or the proper way to say things. I just try my best. Now, this again is allegedly because he stands by the fact that he never had her sitting in. She says that he had her sitting in a different room listening in. Now, she is not the only patient he had involvement with, but she's the only one who has something to do with this case. I forgot to mention earlier, the book that I read, which if you want to learn even more about this case, I highly recommend you read it. It's called The Menendez Murders by Robert Rand. This is where I got the majority of my information from. Now, when Oziel ended the affair with Smith, I guess he was able to keep her like quiet for a while because he like said that she was in danger of knowing this information or whatever. Now, when he ended the affair with Smith, what else is a raging side chick supposed to do? Miss Judalon Smith, you know, she grabs her phone and she calls the LAPD and she says that she knows information about Lyle and Eric and their involvement in their parents' murders. Not too long after that, Lyle was arrested on March 8th, 1990. Now, Eric at the time, who was in Israel playing a tennis tournament, he willingly, you know, he saw the news and he willingly flew from Israel to London, back to Miami, back to LA, and turned himself in. So he ended up being arrested on March 11th of 1990. I need my month for this. I'm still not over this Oziel Smith situation because he not only broke HIPAA by secretly recording the sessions, and whether she was in the room or not, she still knew this information. Again, whether she was in the room or not, it didn't matter. He told her one way or another. Later on, this is really brought into question if the tape should have even been allowed in trial. Spoiler alert, they were. But it really brought into question, like, if people are gonna feel safe going to a therapist because, you know, out of nowhere, you could be recorded and, you know, it might not even be safe. It might not even be protected under your rights. And that was a big battle within itself before this whole trial even began. Now, I also forgot to mention that while I was looking up information about Oziel, I actually found an article that stated that he did actually end up losing his license to practice psychology, which I think is the best decision ever made. I'll put that up on the screen. And I think it's safe to say that he can no longer take advantage of any patient. I think that's it. I don't know if you'll be seeing future me pop up in the video again. Hopefully not. But I'll just let you get back to the rest of the video. And this isn't funny. I just don't understand how... Here's the thing. Trials, you just see the craziest people come out during trial. Now, during a bunch of like the hearings that go on before the trial even like starts, Miss Judalon Smith wants to go on the stand and say that she was being brainwashed or hypnotized by Dr. Oziel, and that he can activate it by saying a specific word, but only he can say it. And you just can't help but laugh at how ridiculous this is. Now, when the news broke that it in fact was Eric and Lyle who'd murdered their parents, my God, the media spectacle that happened, nobody could believe it. People actually couldn't believe that these two brothers could kill their own parents. I mean, it wasn't heard of, especially in Beverly Hills. Like, Beverly Hills, if you live in Beverly Hills, if you have money, you're supposed to be happy beyond belief. No one could understand why. This was on every news story. This was on every newspaper, every magazine cover. The Menendez name was everywhere. Now, trial began 3 years after the murders happened on July 20th, 1993. Now, this was the trial of the century. A lot of people actually believe that it was the O.J. Simpson trial to put court TV on the map. It was the Menendez trial. Let's talk about some of the key chess pieces. So overseeing the whole trial is Judge Stanley Weisberg. Now the prosecution is being led by Pam Bozanich, and the defense of the brothers is being led by Leslie Abramson. Now, Leslie Abramson, she's retired now, but if I ever want someone to defend me because Annalise Keating is fake, I want it to be Leslie Abramson, because she did not back down to anybody. Even in court, she would talk back to the judge if she felt that his ruling was very biased and unfair. She really fought for her clients. Not just these two, but all her other clients. Like, she went to bat for them. Now, Leslie was Eric's defense attorney, while Jill Lansing, another very powerful attorney, but more soft-spoken, she was Lyle's defense attorney, because each brother was going to have a jury. So there were two separate juries, one for Eric and one for Lyle. And the best way that I can understand is there were pieces of evidence that convicted one brother but not the other, and vice versa. So it was just easier to have two separate attorneys, two separate juries. Now, to anybody looking at this case, they would expect it that this trial was going to be an easy open and shut, in and out. It was obvious that the brothers had killed their parents. I mean, they confessed to it themselves. We just didn't know why. Now, the prosecution, led by Pam Bozanich, led her opening statements by saying that the boys had killed their parents over financial gain. So they just wanted the money. They wanted to get their parents out of the way. That's all it was. And she was very adamant about that. Now, I should mention that a grand jury was held to see if the police had enough evidence on this fact of murder for financial gain to charge the brothers on. And the jury didn't find that there was sufficient evidence and found them not guilty of that. Now, remember when I mentioned earlier that the police were very suspicious of the boys' spending habits and how rapidly they were spending the money? The family came out and has maintained that the boys were just spending their usual amounts of money, and that there was no drastic change in how much money they were spending, because that's just the lifestyle they were used to. I mean, it's not their fault they grew up with money. They said that even though Lyle did spend a little bit more than what they were used to seeing, it wasn't enough for them to be suspicious. I just thought I should mention that. Now, to the prosecution and the public, this was just two spoiled, rotten rich boys who, again, wanted mommy and daddy's money and wanted to get them out of the picture. Now, the defense's opening statements, and I'm going to open with Leslie's opening statements. She stated that this wasn't a trial to figure out who murdered Jose and Kitty Menendez. Once again, like I said earlier, it was obvious it was Lyle and Eric. The whole basis of this trial is to figure out why.
The only question in this case is, why did these killings occur? There is no issue as to who killed Jose and Mary Louise Menendez. Why they were killed is what the focus of all of our evidence will be on.
And the why was because the brothers were ultimately living in fear for their lives. Let's take a step back, right? That's a lot. Now, this can go one way or another for you. Why are they in fear for their lives? Abramson's opening statements also revealed that the brothers had suffered physical, emotional, and sexual abuse at the hands of their father when they were children.
But what he could not and did not do with them, he will do with you. He will tell you why he killed his parents. He will tell you the entire painful and difficult and complicated story of his life. Many witnesses will contribute their observations of Eric Menendez and his family over the years to present as complete a picture as possible of the treatment he and his brother received at the hands of their parents. Because the origin of this killing was a lifetime of abuse at the hands of those same parents. One of the experts has spent more than 200 hours with him. And their opinions that he indeed is a young man who suffered extreme forms of lifelong sexual, emotional, and physical abuse at the hands of both of his parents.
I know that may sound like a lot. Honestly, right now, I'm asking you to just sit there and listen to the rest of this video because it might change your thoughts. When it came out that the brothers said that they had killed their parents because of sexual abuse, people were shocked, to say the least. Automatically, a lot of people thought that they were just lying. Now, really quickly, I want to go back to what happened the following days before the murders, right? Before we even continue on with the trial. Now, in this documentary that I watched, the Menendez murders, Eric Tells All, it's available on Hulu. It's very interesting. Eric says that a lot had actually unraveled the days before the murders, and that one day he was actually on his way to talk to Lyle and ask Lyle for some help. Now, what Eric actually ended up seeing was an argument between Lyle and their mom, and it actually escalated to the point where Kitty ripped off Lyle's hairpiece. Eric didn't even know that Lyle even had a hairpiece. He didn't even know that he was losing any hair. Lyle runs back to the guest house where he's staying because at this time he's also on academic probation from Princeton. So he's staying at the guest house and he runs in there and he's fixing his hairpiece. Eric at this moment, you know, he goes into the guest house and waits for Lyle to come out, and he's just a mess because he didn't realize how many secrets there were even between them.
All right, Mr. Menendez, what did you say to your brother when you first started talking to him in the guest house?
I was telling him that that things in the family didn't seem to be going so well, and there seemed to be a lot of secrets, and that people seemed to be getting apart, and that I didn't want that to happen between Lyle and I.
And this is when Eric tells Lyle that everything that Jose had been doing to him as a little kid was still going on. Mind you, Eric at this time is 18.
I asked him several times if he remembered anything about conversation that he had had with Dad or conversations that he had had with me about things that Dad was doing to me, and he said that he didn't know what I was talking about.
So eventually, did you clarify what you were talking about?
Yeah.
What did you say?
I told him that things between Dad and I were still happening.
And with the boys going back and forth talking, there's this state of paranoia, I would say, that's building between them. This is just me saying this, by the way. And I guess that this is what kind of led to their fear of their father potentially killing them, which isn't as crazy as you would think because both Eric and Lyle has said before that Jose threatened to kill them many times while they were growing up, while as children. Imagine being 8 or 9 years old and your dad telling you he's gonna kill you.
And you give us generally what he was saying.
He was saying that he had told me never to tell Lyle, and that he had warned me not to do that, and now he said that Lyle was going to tell everyone, and that it was my fault, and now Lyle was going to tell everyone, and he was not going to let that happen.
Now, you say he said he told you in the past what?
Well, he had told me never, ever to tell anyone.
And did he ever tell you what the consequence would be of telling anyone?
He would kill me.
What did he tell you about telling people?
He just said that it was our secret, that bad things would happen to me if I told anybody.
After them having this discussion and the truth coming out between at least the two of them, Eric actually told Kitty the truth as well as to what had been happening, and turns out that she knew the whole time.
What was your mother doing in the den?
She was sitting on the couch watching TV. She just looked over at me.
And what condition were you in when you got into the den? Do you know?
I was crying.
And did she say anything to you? Did she make any comment to you?
Yeah, she said, "What's the matter with you?"
And what did you respond to her when she said that?
Yeah, I said, "No, nothing. You won't understand."
You said...
I said, "No, nothing. You won't understand."
And did she say anything to that?
Yeah, she said something like, oh, I understand a lot more than you think.
And what did you say when you heard... Well, first of all, what did you think when you heard that?
couldn't. I thought that she was saying that she knew what was happening between Dad and I, but I couldn't. I thought I had it wrong, and so I said, "What do you mean? What do you mean you understand? What do you understand?" And I couldn't understand.
And what did she say?
Well, she said, "Oh, I know. I've always known. You think I'm stupid?" She was real snide. I think she was either. I think she had been drinking and was real.
Sarcastic?
Yeah.
Was that something that your mother was from time to time, sarcastic?
Yes.
So what did you say when she said she knew all along she wasn't stupid?
I didn't know what to say. I just said, "I hate you." I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what she was saying.
All you said was, "I hate you."
I said, "I hate you."
And what did you do?
I ran out the back door.
After this, the boys realized that they couldn't really trust their parents, and it was at this time they thought of the idea of going to San Diego and buying two 12-gauge Mossberg shotguns. Now, the day of the murders, Lyle, I believe, is the one who says that the whole day it was strange around the house. Kitty and Jose weren't talking to him. If he were to try and make light conversations, they really wouldn't say much, maybe a one-worded answer or just a really short-worded answer. And remember the plans that I told you they had with meeting with their friend Perry to go to the Taste of LA festival? That actually ended up being true. First, when Lyle called Perry, Perry didn't pick up. But then when Perry called back, it was Jose who actually answered the phone, but he said that Eric and Lyle weren't home. When in fact, Lyle was home. He was sitting in the guest house. Why Jose decided to lie and say that he wasn't there, I don't know. Maybe he was having a petty moment. I'm not sure. And we may never know. But this did make Lyle very suspicious and made him even more cautious. Eric was out of the house for most of the day, except for when he got back at night, and that's when just all hell broke loose in the house. It was parent against sons, and it was not a pretty argument. Lyle says, or Eric says, that Kitty was yelling at Lyle that he ruined his family. Jose was trying to get Eric to go to his room and that he would go up there in a second. Lyle is yelling at Jose that he wasn't going to hurt Eric anymore, and all of this is just becoming like a volcano. Like, it's a volcano slowly erupting. When Jose takes Kitty into the foyer and they close the doors, this is when Eric and Lyle really thought that they were going to come back out and kill them. So this is when they go out to Eric's Ford, get the guns, and they go back inside and kill their parents. We're in court. Lyle is 24 and he's the first to testify.
Did you love your mom and dad?
Yes.
And on August 20th, 1989, did you and your brother kill your mother and father?
Yes.
Did you kill them for money? Is that no?
No.
Did you kill them because you wanted to pay them back for the way they had treated you?
Excuse me, I reject that young lady.
Overall. No.
Why did you kill your parents?
Because we were afraid.
Now, when it comes time for Lyle to talk about the abuse, Lyle does his best to keep himself composed, but you really hear it in his voice the moment that he just starts to, like, where he wants to, like, kind of break down, that he just is not ready to come out with the dark secrets that he's been holding since he was a child. And I mean, I don't blame him. What he says is very heavy. Lyle testifies that Jose began to molest him from the age of 6 all the way to the age of 8.
And between the ages of 6 and 8, did your father have sexual contact with you?
Yes.
And how did it start?
Just started with, after sports practices, he would massage me, and we would have these talks, and he would show me, and he would fondle me, and he would ask me to do the same with him, and I would touch him, and we would undress.
Where would this
and it
take
was
place?
in my bedroom.
And How often would this happen?
Like 2 or 3 times a week.
And for how long did this happen?
Not too long. It began to change.
When did it begin to change?
I'm not sure exactly at what time, but almost close to when I was 7.
And how did it change?
Just became more involved.
What do you mean more involved?
We would be in the bathroom, and he would put me on my knees, and he would guide me, all my movements, and I would have oral sex with him.
Lyle also testifies that while he was 7 years old, that's when Jose first started making him perform oral sex on him. He started to use objects on Lyle.
He used objects.
What kind of objects?
A toothbrush and some sort of shaving utensil brush.
And did he try to penetrate you with something else?
He did.
And what was it?
He raped me.
Did you cry?
Yes.
Did you bleed?
Yes.
Were you scared?
Very.
Did you ask him not to?
Yes.
How did you ask him not to?
I just told him, I don't.
And his lawyer did ask if he had ever told his mom about what was happening. Lyle said that he did.
Did you tell your mom?
Yes.
What did you say to your mom?
I told her to tell Dad to leave me alone. And he keeps touching me.
What did your mom say?
She told me to stop it. And that I was exaggerating. And that my dad has to punish me when I do things wrong. And she told me that he loved me.
Now, Diane Vandermolen, a cousin of the brothers, also testified that when she was staying with the family for one of the summers, Lyle had actually told her that Jose had been touching him in his private area. And when she went over to tell Kitty, Kitty just said that Lyle was just making it up. It's said that when children who are sexually abused, they tend to mimic what's been done to them on others just because they don't understand what is being done to them. And unfortunately, that's what Lyle did with Eric.
Did you do something to your brother?
Yes.
What did you do to your brother?
I took him out to the woods. Whenever I felt, I don't know, I took him out sometimes, and I took a toothbrush also, and I played with Eric in the same way. And I'm sorry.
I just want to take a moment here and say that, Lyle, of course he didn't know any better. I mean, he's what, 6, 7, 8, and he's just trying to make sense of what is happening, and he was a kid. Lyle also testified that Kitty would also partake in some abuse where she would have him lie in a bed with her and she would make him put his hands on her, she would kiss him, and just things that a mother should not be doing to her child. And this went on from when Lyle was 11 to 13 years old.
What ages are you talking about where she would expose herself to you this way?
Objection, the question is leading and mischaracterizing the testimony.
Overall. I was about 11.
She help you with your baths?
Yes.
How would she help you with your baths?
She would come in after I'd been in there a while. She would help wash my hair and wash me with a sponge.
How old are you talking about?
Same, 11 to like 11 to 13.
And when you say she would wash you with the sponge, would she just wash your back, or?
No, she would wash me everywhere.
You slept in bed with your mom a lot, didn't you, even when you were little?
Yes.
And did you continue to sleep in her bed around this time when you're 11 and 12?
Sometimes.
And sometimes, did you touch your mom?
Yes.
Would your dad be in bed?
Sometimes.
And where would you touch her?
Everywhere.
Did she touch your back?
She kissed me, but she didn't touch me.
Now, after Lyle testifies, it's Eric's turn, and Eric, who is 21 at the time, he goes on the stand to reveal that Jose had been abusing him from the age of 6, same as Lyle, but Jose was abusing Eric all the way up until he was 18, even just a few weeks short of the murders.
Mr. Menendez, during the summer of 1989, were you being sexually molested by your father?
Yes.
And when did that begin? How old were you?
I was 6 years old.
How long, from the time you were 6 when you say your father started to molest you, how long did that go on?
12 years.
And were there episodes of sexual activity with your father over that last summer?
Yes.
Now, just a few weeks before the murders, Eric had actually been looking forward to going to college. He had just gotten accepted to UCLA, and he said that this was his moment to finally just start a new life. He was going to be able to get away from the house, get away from what was going on, and he felt that this was a time where he could finally just be free.
Did you have some hope or dream or expectation over that summer of 1989 for some improvement in your life?
I had it for a lot longer than that.
But you had it that summer as well?
Yes.
And first of all, what was it that you wanted to improve in your life?
I wanted to end the sex with my dad.
And did you have some expectation of how that was going to happen?
Yes.
And what did you expect?
I was going to go to college.
And how was that going to end the sex with your dad?
I was going to get away from him, and I wasn't going to sleep at the house anymore.
Now, what college were you expecting to go to?
At that time, UCLA.
And where were you expecting to live when you went to UCLA?
On campus.
In
the dorm.
Just a regular, ordinary dorm?
Yeah.
How important was this idea in your mind that going to college would end the molestation by your father?
How important was it?
Yes, how significant a notion was this?
It was the most important thing in my life. It was everything in my life. It was all I thought about.
Why was it all you thought about?
I don't understand.
All right.
Why was it all I thought about?
Yeah.
Because it would end the sex, and that's all I thought about.
How did you feel at 18 about the fact that your father was having sex with you?
I hated it. I hated it. I hated it.
And
although he had already been planning on staying on campus, there was a rule actually at the time. I don't know if it still exists. It was mandatory that all freshmen had to stay on campus their freshman year. Jose Menendez, he told Eric that he was going to be living at the house at least 3 to 4 nights a week. Now, when Eric asked why, the reason Jose gave him was because his parents wanted to keep an eye on his homework. Let's face it, Eric knew the real reason why. He knew that the abuse wasn't going to end. It was at this moment that he was going to look for Lyle to get help.
Mr. Menendez, you've heard the testimony of your brother that you and he killed your parents on August 20th, 1989. Did you not?
Yes, we did.
And what do you believe was the originating cause of you and your brother ultimately winding up shooting your parents?
Me telling.
You telling what?
Me telling Lyle that,
You telling Lyle what? Was it you telling Lyle about something that was happening?
my dad.
Okay.
My dad.
Your Honor, can I ask a leading question?
If you don't ask.
My dad.
Wait 1 second, Mr. Menendez. Okay, let me ask.
No, he was in the process of answering, so there's no need to ask him.
Can you answer the question?
Yes.
Okay, it was you telling Lyle what?
My dad had been molesting me.
And did you want something from your brother? Is that why you told him?
I wanted it to stop.
Were you seeking help from your brother?
Yes.
And when you were in Israel in 1990, did you feel that seeking help from your brother was why your brother was in jail?
Yes.
When he begins giving details of when the abuse started, once again, similar to Lyle, it started at 6 years old and it would start with massages, but Eric was forced to do a lot more. Now, Eric testified that there were different types of sexual acts that his father would make him do. He had like specific names for them.
Over the course of the 12 years, did the type of sexual activity that your father engaged in with you vary and change?
Yes.
Were there patterns to the behavior so that there were actually different kinds of sexual incidents with your father?
Overall.
Yes.
And did you come over the years to give those different kinds of sexual incidents names?
Yes.
And would you tell us what were the names that you gave to those different types of incidents?
Knees.
Knees?
Knees.
K-N-E-E-S?
Yes.
That was one type?
Yes.
What was another type?
Nice sex. Nice sex.
Nice sex. What was another kind?
Rough sex.
Rough sex. And was there another kind still?
Yes.
And what name did you come to give that kind?
Just sex.
You called that sex.
Yes.
And was that you called sex some form of intercourse?
Yes.
When, before your father died, was the last incident of what you called sex?
In May
Of what year?
1989.
And when, before your father died, was the last incident of knees?
In August
Of what year?
1989.
And that last incident of knees took place in what location?
My bedroom.
Eric was forced to perform oral sex on his dad when he was just 7 or 8 years old. Eric then went on to testify that his father had raped him many times throughout the years up until he was 18. The last time he was raped by his father was just 2 weeks before the murders happened. Where's Kitty? Where is the mom in this equation? And unfortunately, she, not only did she do horrible things as well, but she just stood by and didn't do anything. I mean, she told Eric she knew what was going on the whole time. And I know a lot of people are wondering, like, how is it that a mother can just sit by and not do anything? And I don't have the perfect answer for you, but I do know that it's possible because it's right here. Now, when it came out that the brothers had this defense of sexual abuse, not many people were happy because a lot of people thought this was just something that they had made up to get away with the murders or try to get a lesser sentence. And this was actually called the abuse excuse in court. People really weren't buying it. Pam Bozanich herself said, and I quote, and I'm going to read this so I can get it right, "Men could not be raped because they lacked the necessary equipment to be raped." Now that has to be top of the list. One of the most ignorant things that I have ever read in my life. She fully believes, even to this day, that these boys were just making it up, that they did not suffer any kind of abuse, and that they are just spoiled rich brats who wanted money. And you know, that's her opinion. She has the right to her own opinion.
Pero, ¿sabes qué? Like, yo respeto tu opinión. Es una porquería de opinión, pero la respeto.
But the ridicule that they faced was completely unnecessary. I mean, SNL even made a skit about them, and it wasn't even a funny skit. I mean, a lot of the SNL skits are not funny, but this one was just at the bottom of the trash can.
Now, is it true your father never allowed your other two brothers, Danny and Jose Jr., out of the house?
Yes.
And that he never allowed them to go to school?
Yes.
Needless to say, the 80s and the 90s, it was unfortunately a different time for victims, and not a lot of people believed victims at all. And you're probably wondering, why didn't they say anything before? Again, who was gonna believe them? You know, were you gonna believe them? They barely believed women back then. Are they really gonna believe two young adults who are claiming that their father had sexually abused them? No. To the world back then, it seemed utterly impossible that that could happen. Especially because they were rich, which I don't understand how the notion of them being rich equaled the fact that they couldn't be abused sexually or physically or emotionally in any way possible. It was a different time, right? And I like to think that we're getting better at believing victims, but I still think a lot of work needs to be done, and a lot of people still need justice. When they were kids, they had told their cousin, I don't want to put any blame on her, and I'm really not. Just my question is, why didn't she say something to her mom? In all my research, it's the same thing. Everybody was just afraid of Jose Menendez, and I don't know how they let him have that kind of power over them. Actually, I forgot to mention that earlier. Now, in every workplace that Jose Menendez worked at, people were very intimidated by him. He was not a friendly person, and nobody liked him. If someone did something that he didn't like at the job, he had no problem in humiliating them in front of everybody, potentially even firing them in front of the whole staff, because he, first of all, he just got pleasure in humiliating people, like I said before, but he just wanted to assert that dominance that he had and that power, and he wanted to make people know that he was better than them.
Let me ask you something. Had you, over the course of your life, ever seen anybody stand up successfully to your father?
No.
Had you seen anybody ever try?
Yes.
Who was that?
A car salesman at a BMW dealership.
Okay, and what was the outcome of that attempt?
The car salesman started to cry.
Grown man?
Yeah.
A lot of people have said that they were just putting on a really great performance and they're acting, they're just lying. But I don't see that when I look at their testimonies. I mean, First of all, the amount of detail that they have, I'm sorry, but you have to be really sick to come up with that stuff. I don't believe that they made it up, because the amount of emotion, the pain in their voice, and for lack of a better word, just how embarrassed they are that all of this is coming out on live TV for millions of people to see.
I'm just going to show it to you. Is this the naked picture of you that you were testifying about?
Yes.
Does it embarrass you, this picture?
Yes.
Why would anybody want that coming out? Again, this trial was televised. Their secrets are being poured out for everybody to hear. The evidence that the defense has on the big bulletin board, Polaroids of these boys, literally as young children, of their lower half, just a whole Polaroid of their private areas on display for not only the whole courtroom to see, but for America to see. I feel bad for them.
Do you ever take photographs of you and your brother?
Yes.
And what would the circumstances be in which he would take photographs?
He would take photographs of us, our private parts.
And would he have you come in and pose for these photographs, or how would that happen?
I would just, if we were in the showers or bathtub or changing, he would just use the same camera that my mother used, and then he would come in and take just a photograph or two, and he wouldn't say anything, and then he would leave.
Eric and Lau's cousin Andy Cano testified, saying that when they were children, Eric had confided in Andy by asking him questions if his father also gave him massages, because once again, he's trying to get a gauge of what's normal between a father and son. Even though Andy said that his father didn't do that, Eric didn't say anything else. But I think that's when he knew that what was happening wasn't, to me, that seemed like his first instinct or notion that, oh, this isn't normal. And they both testified that Jose Menendez would tell them that the Greeks or whoever, before battle, they would have sex with one another to build a bond, and that's what they were doing. No.
Did your dad used to have talks with you about sex between men?
Yes.
And what types of situations would he talk to you about?
He would talk about the bonding between men, going into battle or in competitions, mostly with regards to battle and history, and that sexual interaction and touching and hugging, but also sex was throughout history was something that men that had gone into battle had done together. Had me read passages about it. There would be particular passages about Greeks, soldiers having had sex with each other before they went into battle.
Now, in the documentary that I mentioned earlier, Eric Tells All, their cousin Al Anderson also said that when he was staying with the family, he would hear strange noises coming from rooms. He would see that Jose and the boys would shower together. Just things that really seemed out of the ordinary. And he heard actually a yell coming from a room one time. And he said that when he ran over to see what was going on, Kitty immediately stopped him and told him to not go near that door, or to not open that door. Of course, I already did mention that Polaroid pictures were admitted into evidence of these boys exposed. I'm not putting those on screen, but I will put up a questionable photo. Should have been a red flag right there since the very beginning when it was taken. And I won't say anything more about it because as soon as you see it. So the boys had many witnesses testifying on their behalf during this trial. There were family members, teachers, coaches, friends. Everybody testified to the behavior of Jose Menendez and the treatment that he gave the boys. There were 56 defense witnesses in this trial, and not one of them said that the boys were lying. Not one of them said that this abuse couldn't have been true. Not one person said that Jose was a loving father and a good person, that he would never do this to his boys. I think that says a lot about all of this. Now, in the book that I had mentioned earlier, The Menendez Murders by Robert Rand, he writes that many of the family members always said that Kitty never really wanted to have kids. How she just wanted her life to be just her and Jose. And that she never really cared to be a mother. Lyle also testified that many times she would say to him in his face that she wishes he had never been born.
Did your mother ever express any resentment about that?
Oh yes, many, many times.
What would she say?
She would say many things. She would say that I ruined her life, and she would explain to me why and how I ruined her life.
What would she tell you about why and how you ruined her life?
She told me that she had a job in New York to be a hostess at a restaurant, that she said she could make almost $50,000 a year, and that then suddenly she had gotten pregnant, that she had not wanted to get pregnant, that my dad had then forced her, well, gave her an ultimatum: either you leave or you stay home with my son and quit. And so she chose to stay home, and essentially her life was pretty much ruined from that point on. But she would be throwing things and screaming and flailing and wanting and trying to hit you and saying that you're a bastard. And she cursed a lot, and that wait till your dad gets home, I'll tell him the things that you didn't do today, and I wish you were never born, and why can't you be like your brother, and what's the matter with you? And then I would try to say something. She would say, shut up, I don't want to hear it, you're stupid, I hate you.
How old were you when you heard things like, I wish you were never born?
Seven.
Now, not much is known about Kitty's early life. Now, what I could find and, watch, she did also, go through an abusive household for a period of time. And that's hard. I will say that. And I do want to be sympathetic towards that, right? Because no one should ever go through any type of abuse. Now, I also don't think it justifies you also putting your kids through the same abuse, if not worse, of what you went through. As the trial wrapped up 6 months after it began, the prosecution is hoping for a guilty verdict, while the defense is hoping for a verdict of imperfect self-defense. And with that, the juries went off to deliberate. Now, after what was 3 weeks of deliberation for each jury, because again, there were 2 juries, once it was official that both juries were just ultimately deadlocked, Judge Weisberg had no choice but to call a mistrial. Now, there was a 1.5 year delay from the end of the first trial to the beginning of the second trial, so a lot's been happening. Now, on October 3rd, 1995, O.J. Simpson was acquitted of his crimes just 8 days before the beginning of the second Menendez trial.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information.
Now, with the O.J. Simpson trial and the trial of the officers who beat Rodney King, both ending in acquittals, this impacted the Menendez trial very, very negatively. The district attorney had failed in getting the correct convictions in those other trials. The public was completely outraged, even though some people were happy about Simpson, but nonetheless, they felt as if they had to get this one right. Now, this ended up just completely changing everything in the second Menendez trial. In the second trial, all the cameras were taken out of the courtroom. Most, if not all, of the evidence was just completely removed from the defense. Now, if you remember from the first trial that I explained that each brother had his own jury because some evidence convicted one and not the other, blah, 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 all that stuff. Well, that doesn't matter anymore because now both brothers were just going to have one jury and that's it. All of a sudden, these legal rulings, proceedings, and regulations were no longer needed. Judge Weisberg completely changed all of his rulings in the second trial, Expert testimony wasn't permitted. Friends, family members, all of those defense witnesses from the first trial, they were no longer allowed to testify, and the few that were, they weren't allowed to touch base on the abuse claims, the parenting style of Jose Menendez and how he parented them. And the brothers' defense was just completely dismantled. I mean, the best way that I can explain it to you was that he let them keep their defense that they were in fear for their lives, but he didn't let them use evidence as to why they were in fear. So it basically made no sense at all as to why he even... All this jury heard this second time around was that Jose Menendez didn't give any hugs, he didn't tell his sons I love you enough, and that's why they killed him. I don't know if I'll be able to find the picture. I know it, I saw it in a documentary, I don't remember which one it was, but there's literally a picture that the prosecution, which by the way isn't led by Pam this time, she left the case. There's literally a picture that they use that says not enough hugs or something like that. And it was a stupid like chart that you would make in like middle school, but this is what they use in their case to tell them that this is why the brothers killed their parents. It was just a chart that said not enough hugs. I don't know what's sadder, the fact that they went with that chart or the fact that the jury believed them. By the end of the second trial, after only 16 hours of deliberation, the jury comes back with a verdict of guilty. And at sentencing, Judge Weisberg sentences the brothers to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Now, a manslaughter conviction would have granted the brothers 22 years in prison. The Menendez brothers have been in jail for 33 years. Now, for whatever reason, the California Department of Corrections decided it was going to be best if the brothers were separated. Now, after this, Lyle was taken to the Mute Creek State Prison, where Eric was taken to... I don't remember what prison he was at first, but I do know that afterwards he was taken to the Richard J. Donovan Correctional Facility, where he has been in for the majority of his sentence. And the moment that they were separated and taken to different prisons, they never saw each other again. And I can't imagine what it must have been like to be separated from the only person who knows exactly what you're going through. Now, they were separated until February of 2018 when Lyle was moved to Eric's prison, but they were still in separate housing units. Now, it wasn't until April of 2018 when Lyle was moved to Eric's housing unit, and that's when they saw each other for the first time in 22 years. It kind of is a complicated case, but not really. Should they have killed their parents? No, absolutely not. No one is saying that that was the right thing to do. But we're not gonna sit here and pretend that Jose and Kitty Menendez were the best parents in the world and that they never did anything wrong. Your parents are supposed to be your role models. Your parents are supposed to be your protectors, your healers in a sense, you know? They're supposed to build you up and, you know, mold you into a good human, into society. It was only a matter of time that these two boys were going to explode, because I can't imagine having to deal with that much abuse for God knows how long. And it wasn't just sexual abuse, it was physical abuse, it was emotional abuse. Sometimes I sit and wonder, and I'm just like, how is it that anybody had the capacity to even do that to their own child? And I may never know, no one will ever know. It's just unfortunate what happened to everybody in this story, because if we look back at Jose Menendez's life, he really could have had the ultimate American dream. An immigrant from Cuba, starts off by living in his cousin's attic, goes to being a dishwasher, then is like all these high positions and all these companies, makes it to Beverly Hills, right? Has a wife and has 2 kids who are nationally ranked tennis players, right? It could have been, he could have had a very successful life, which is what he wanted. And instead, it frustrates me, okay? We need to free the Menendez brothers, okay? Here's my shirt. I don't think that they should be in jail any longer than they already have been. Now, to put somewhat of a positive spin on this, Eric and Lyle have been using their time in prison to help other prisoners who have gone through abuse and have been counseling them. I remember reading that they had actually also been helping in painting a mural for the prison. So I guess they're trying to like make the best of it, I guess. Although I do think the brothers have used up their appeals. There has been some new evidence, new developments that has come up, and their lawyer is currently filing a habeas corpus petition, which could potentially lead to a new hearing. I also read that the DA's office is looking into the drastic changes between the first and the second trial. I can't wait to see what comes out after that. Now, you're probably wondering, right? What is this new evidence, you say, that could potentially give the brothers a chance at getting released from prison? Well, if you also remember, I said that this was part 1 of 2, so you're gonna have to wait for next week. I know, I'm sorry, but you're just gonna have to wait. If I were to literally fit everything in one video, we'd be here forever. And first of all, I had to condense this whole trial, this whole case into what I just told you, because there is so much that I could still talk about. I would lose my voice from sitting here and talking for much longer than I already have been. I had something in mind that I wanted to say and I forgot what it was. I really do believe these two brothers and what they've said. I don't think that they were these masterminds that just made up this whole lie. I mean, so that's it for today's case. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoy Coffee and Crime. Like I said, part 2 is coming out. We'll see how many of these I can do, because I want to do, like, not necessarily newer cases, but like I don't want to do like the repeated ones. I think I'm just gonna wrap it up because this video is probably already longer than it should be. Let me know what you guys thought of the case. Tell me your opinions. Tell me what you think down below in the comments. Let's talk, because I need someone to talk about this with. I talk about this case a lot with my mom. We need to talk, okay? Because we need justice for the Menendez brothers, and I fully support them. With that being said, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like. If you want to see more from me, hit subscribe. Make sure to follow me on all my social medias, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.